I just want to begin by saying this has been such a beautiful day, and I thought I knew a lot about Athina, and I feel like I know nothing of such an extensive world. And I want to thank Andre, I want to thank Mark, and all the people I've met in the last 6 months associated with her and in her lifetime. I first met Athina in Cincinnati, and Mark and I were talking about this. I do have a slide. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. And it's sort of a terrible picture because it's a picture of a bunch of pictures I took for a memorial book for Mark. And I was just trying to capture the beginning, but I must have met her in 1985 because we were both at University of Cincinnati. And at first, just general acquaintances. I must have run into her in the hall. I was in psychology. She was in neuroscience. And I planned this big trip to Europe, a solo trip for 5 months. And she actually connected me with Aliki and a few other friends. So I saw her college. I didn't know her that well, but in Athens in 1985. But it's really when I returned that we became good friends. We met through a mutual acquaintance, Russell Gruber. We had a group of friends with Michael Ichiyama, and we just formed this magical group of friends. She was the long-lost sister of mine. We connected on so many levels, intellectually, we played together, and there's just a few of our trips that were really fun. And we were young. She was 22, I was 24, so it's hard to think back that far. So we would all get together in Russell's apartment and talk. And one day she comes in and she said, well, I'm going to a meeting. I do believe now it is neuroscience, many years ago. And she said, I'm going to meet a neuroscientist. We're all laughing. Oh, wink, wink. Sure you are, Athina. Have fun. It'll be a great meeting. She comes back. I met a neuroscientist. And it was Mark. So blink, blink, she moved to Del Mar within a couple months. So things happened fast. It was probably at the beginning of our friendship, but she fell madly in love with Mark, and the rest of her life is history here in Del Mar and with all of you people. So she moved, but we stayed connected, and almost primarily through mail. And even when internet was up and running, even though back then, but we wrote letters. And I think her first couple years here, I'm going to move this again. Her first couple years here, she wrote actually very, very long letters because she was in labs trying to finish her dissertation. And she wrote a lot about just adjusting to this culture, a competitive culture, where she was going. I must have written back the same things. We were on the same professional trajectory, finishing our PhDs, getting our first appointments, writing our first grants. So a majority of our writing, our communication was really through writing. And it's so special to me now because I have all these letters and so many details of her character. Some of my favorite ones are not just the successes, and I've told this to a few people, but some of the more difficult times. This is one from 1989. Hello, Liza. I'm writing you from the lab while watching my rats being trained. I have to keep my eye on them. I don't have much to do. It's rather boring. One of my experiments didn't work, and I'm repeating it right now. I'm a little upset about it, but not much I can do. And so she always wrote about her work in between all these letters. And we really didn't see each other a lot. I think mostly I would see her here in Del Mar and in California because we did have an overlap. I ended up in neuropsychology, and actually she wrote me a letter and said, there's this man, Igor Grant, who just got this big grant, and you could come out and study for your fellowship and write me right away because Mark and I are leaving on a trip. But in between, I had accepted a postdoc in Denver. Most of my time actually with her was with her and Mark. So I think even though we were close friends, Mark, she she and I and Mark ended up being great friends. And we were on a walk on the beach yesterday. And this is us walking in 2005 on Del Mar Beach. But it was really the simple times that we had. We talked so much about science, but we never wrote a paper or anything together. But we talked about the process of getting there, both academically and with our concerns. And one of my favorite memories is in the old house, Mark's old house. I was putting my first poster together. She was so excited. She ran and got paper, and this is how you do the title, and this is where you want this. So she was somebody who taught me a lot also. So over time, we were absorbed in our own lives, but we always kept in touch by mail. And she sent me, looking at that last video is so beautiful because she sent me postcards probably from all over the world. And they're really lovely to read. So we continue on our lives in pretty different trajectories, but always connected. And always just talking about as we would get old that we'd be drinking wine somewhere in Greece on a beach looking back. And this is a great photo. Almost every visit I had to Del Mar, we would take a photo. And Athina was always in white and I was always in black. And I think we have a series for 20 years in a row of sort of the same place in the house. So when she called to tell me about her diagnosis, I was instantly in shock and heartbroken. Sadly, saying goodbye and the process involved in saying goodbye is part of a lifelong friendship. And I think everybody here today is also processing their goodbye. She never really slowed down after that. You can tell from the video, and I know some of the details of the treatment, and she really did respond to treatment, and her life just went on, and it was just amazing how much she did. They traveled, she worked, she moved forward with that relentless Athina drive. We were able to have a few moments together. I actually had a boyfriend in New York City, so we finally had a chance to go to a dance in New York City at Lincoln Center and drink champagne in the West Village with Toby. I finally got to host them in my house in Denver, and I could make lasagna and an apple pie for Athina and Mark. And these are memorable things well after she was diagnosed. I'm embarrassed to say I could barely keep up with her, so I came out about 1.5 years ago. She wanted to go to yoga. She knew it was good for her heart and her chemo. She hiked every day, so Mark and I are trailing behind her through this hike. And I'm like, I can't even keep up with you. And she was saying, this is good for my heart. This is good for my treatment. We must do it. And we're breathing behind, following her. So she just continued her life and worked so hard and just loved Mark, loved her work, loved all of you, and loved science. And we just continued to write on. But the letters got fewer, the emails got fewer. And when the treatment stopped working and her options began to narrow, I think all of us began to mourn. And I think the minute we knew her diagnosis, many of us started to mourn. But it wasn't really till the end. It just seemed they would figure it out. They're so smart and there's so many people. But I think inevitably we knew something would change, and this was difficult. Part of me wished she could find a little peace in what was happening. She would write about being depressed. She didn't talk a lot about dying or her death. But in a bigger part, I appreciated that she didn't want to let go. And Igor, I think, when he talked about how she wanted to leave the lab and leave her life in a place where things would carry on, is really important to know, that it wasn't denial of death. It was just wanting to finish the most important things. And the most important things are the people in this room today. So I really appreciated that. She wanted more time to do everything. Up until the last conversation I had with her, she said, I think I could go skiing. I'm really sick. She was trying to make plans, and they had to cancel. But that one more, she loved the world and loved travel. And I loved travel, so we really had that in common. So I was really anxious when her writing slowed and she stopped writing. I was terrified, but thankful when Mark finally wrote me and said, she's ready to see you. I was on my way to Asia, and I was trying to stay in the background, so I think I'd write intermittently. I wrote Bart once and said, I'm a friend. Do you know anything about Athina? He wrote back, well, Mark is very busy, and he didn't know who I was. So it's a very funny email looking back, because he's like, no, I'm not going to tell you anything. And, you know, he's very busy with his wife. And then he found out it was Liza. So that was a very sweet connection. So I was able to come out. This is us in, so we really didn't see each other much outside of Del Mar. Really, my life here was with her and Mark. But they did come to Colorado a few times, and this is us at the Garden of the Gods. And, you know, in general, we didn't do typical girlfriend things. I think we went shopping once, and we bought here in Del Mar, because we were always talking about family or a grant or a process. So she took me to some upscale mall here for the first time, and we ended up buying these twinner silk pants, because I was going to New York for New Year's Eve. And she bought another pair to be with Mark for New Year's Eve. And I think that's like the only girlfriend shopping event we ever had. Everything else was drinking coffee at breakfast, so all of us talking about our work and how we connected. And I think that's sort of sweet in some ways. It's a different, special friendship. So I did come out, and I wanted to visit before I left. And I was very fortunate to come for a few days, crying all the way getting here. I did get to the hospital, and just watching Mark so calm and so loving and so skillful. Their love is just an unbelievable story, and the science that goes with it, and all the people that love them and love her, seeing that today is just, it's a real beautiful thing, and I wanted to acknowledge that. So I was able to be here for a few days. She was pretty sick, but at one point she wanted to be off the hospital bed, so she got back into their bed, and I was able to sit there for a few hours and just sort of giggle and talk about our lives and the funniest things. And to me, that's really a special way to say goodbye, because it's painful to watch, but you also want to connect. So we did take this beautiful walk. Mark took this picture, and I knew I was leaving in the morning, but I don't think I could really say goodbye. And our last moments, I don't actually remember saying goodbye, because I just thought I didn't think I'd see her again, but it was hard to do. So thank you, Mark, for giving me a chance to come out and see her. It meant so much to me. And thank you, Athina, for being brave enough to have people see her in a state where she was so vulnerable. And thank you to everybody I've met in this process of saying goodbye, because I think everybody has mourned, and this has been a special way to acknowledge her brilliance. I miss her. I know everybody here misses her. I love her. I think everybody here loved her. And I just hope someday I imagine some postcard from some far away is going to come in, because that was really our way of communicating. So thank you to everybody. And it's a very sad but beautiful day to see how everything does shine on that is connected to her.